Welcome to the Show Me the Way podcast. I am your host, Andrea Miller, and I'm so excited to bring this show to you. Show Me the Way is a podcast dedicated to exploring the journeys of those who have faced adversity and found themselves on unexpected paths. We will have meaningful, thoughtful conversations about challenges we have faced and how we discovered and forged new direction. Prepare to be inspired and to uncover your own strength as you listen to relatable and motivating stories. Life has a way of twisting and turning, and we often need a fresh perspective to understand how to navigate. Let's show each other the way. This week on the Show Me the Way podcast, I'm joined by my friend and fellow Duchenne mom, Kelly Fitzpatrick. Kelly is an energetic, strong-willed, and fiercely independent superhero mama who has worn many hats over the years, including Army veteran, dental hygienist, yogi, and mom to 3 boys. Kelly's life has taken her across multiple states through her military service, education, and career. She married a fellow serviceman, and together they welcomed 3 boys close in age. When her oldest began showing signs of muscle weakness, Kelly trusted her instincts and started digging for answers. That search led to a devastating diagnosis, Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Soon after, she learned she was a genetic carrier, and heartbreakingly, that her 2 younger sons were also affected. As if that wasn't enough, Kelly found herself navigating profound loss and change all at once. Within the same year as the diagnoses, her marriage ended in divorce, and a few years later, she also lost her mother. Today, Kelly cares for her boys mostly full-time, facing new challenges daily. While she has some support from family and friends, she's still learning how to ask for and accept help. Despite enduring an incredible amount of adversity in a short period of time, Kelly continues to show up for her boys with love, strength, and determination. She is deeply reflective in this episode, sharing how she's beginning to better understand her own needs, even as she so often puts her children first, sometimes at the expense of her own self-care. Kelly's story offers powerful lessons for all of us, regardless of our circumstances. She reminds us to stay present, to ask for help specifically, and accept it when we need it, to say no when something isn't right, and to never give up, because there's always a way to figure something out. Kelly and her boys offer incredible perspective, resilience, and grace. I'm truly honored she shared her journey and wisdom on the show. Welcome back to the Show Me the Way podcast. My guest today is Kelly Fitzpatrick. Kelly is a dear friend who not only understands much of what our family's journey has been like, she also has given me so much perspective and helpful advice throughout our friendship. She's really made a positive impact on my life and my family's life. Kelly is a single mother of 3 boys, all of who have been diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy like Nathan. Not a day goes by that Kelly doesn't have to face a challenge or worry about the future or question how she navigates her family's path. She works tirelessly to ensure a happy and quality life for her boys. She puts their needs above her own constantly, yet still finds ways to bring joy to all whenever she can. She loves adventures and is never afraid to try new things. Although the boys are getting older and continue to have more equipment and accessible needs, she still finds ways to take trips and explore with them. She has a large van she lovingly calls Large Marge. And just recently, Nathan's Ninjas was able to help her purchase a trailer to hook up and easily take equipment with them. I'm inspired by Kelly's never back down attitude and all that she shows her boys. She wears many hats as a yogi, a dental hygienist, a salesperson, and of course, superhero mom. So welcome to the show, Kelly. I can't wait to learn even more about you and your family.
You for having me.
Of
I
course.
actually just put it my Marge's plates were due for renewal, and I finally did like a custom, but large Marge, like the closest variation of it was already taken in Wisconsin. So I'm kind of like, who are they? But if it works out, it's going to be like LG
Okay.
So hopefully people, it's either like large Marg, like I need a large margarita, or large Marge.
Most people will get it.
I think most people will get it. But
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
we just went through a Culver's drive-through, and the boys were like, "Tell them it's large Marge," and the lady's like, "Dang, they roll up and they're like, that's kind of mean. Your mom's like not large," and I'm like, "No, the van.
No,
the van is Marge."
Oh, that is so
That's
funny. I love that. Well, like I said, thank you so much for making some time. As I just described, you've got a lot on your plate, so I appreciate you giving us some time today. But I said a little bit about what I know about you, so I'd like to give you a few minutes to tell our listeners a little bit more about you from your perspective.
I guess at the root of everything, you're kind of spot on. I'm a mom, obviously. Before that, I was in the Army. I've just thought of like all the hats I've worn. Like, yeah, I'm an Army veteran. I was in the National Guard for like actively in the Guard for about 8 years. And then I was many things in the Guard too, but I was trained in air conditioning, HVAC, and then also then converted into being a medic towards my final years. So I learned a lot of skills there. I think I talked about this in a Veterans Day interview with a local newspaper that I feel like the things I was trained to do in the military like never even came to fruition in the military, but it's helped me navigate Duchenne and being a mom of 3 boys with Duchenne. And there's days it's like you can just lose your identity so easily, but I think I've learned like, okay, at the heart I am a dental hygienist. I don't know, I don't think of myself as any one thing. I think it's like I draw upon skills from all the different things I do. And it's kind of challenging. There's days where like the military side of me or background is like, you never take no for an answer. Like you break it, you fix it. You brought it with you. Like I struggle with help, I think, and I always want to have a way to do it by myself. And kind of that's just being practical. Like, wow, 3 wheelchairs in this van is taking up a lot of room, but I still have no idea how I'm gonna tow things. But I don't want Duchenne to slow us down or stop us. But then the yogi side of me is like, it's okay to be still. It's okay to do less. Yeah. So I think it's good to recognize both and then just kind of knowing your limits. And that's something I've been kind of thinking a lot about lately. Just, I always figure things out. And I think there's this time where I've reached like, I don't even really ask for help anymore. I just kind of intuitively figure it out or what I think is a good way, like I had a cookie night with my friends and they were asking about our elevator project and we've had projects going on for like 3 years, just like one into the next. And now we're kind of towards the end of home projects. So part of Duchenne is you adapt your expectations for your family, for your future. My jobs have had to change. I've had a career loss. I've had relationship loss. I've had some of that by choice, some of it through divorce and not like what I wanted, but you have to just kind of carve a path forward. But
Mm-hmm.
then there's also that physical need to change and adapt. And we've had so many projects over the last 3 years that it's like, whoa, I haven't even stopped to think about how much time that consumes just making time for people to be in your home and mix in therapies and things in that. And it's like, wow, that was a full-time job. But we're kind of getting to the end of things that now with the boys getting older, I'm kind of realizing, okay, a traditional Hoyer lift doesn't really work on my upper level. We have an elevator. So now the boys can go upstairs. That was one of the things we weren't sure about, like staying in this house where I'm at. And I'm just like so grateful that I can continue to be a homeowner. And a lot of that is probably from being a previous homeowner before Duchenne entered our lives. And then, being a veteran, I was able to secure my own home and I had a good career in dental hygiene when I was going through all those things. But we're kind of at this place where I'm like, is it okay to just be static? Like, I'm always afraid for like, what's the next thing that's going to happen? And am I ready for it? I think that's kind of always in the back of my mind. But now I'm like, well, is the Hoyer lift enough? What do we need upstairs? Do we need tracking? And my friends at this cookie exchange are like, well, like, what do you do right now? And I'm like, well, I just lift them. We just go. And he's I think 125 pounds. And my friend just like, yeah, you shouldn't be lifting more than half your body weight. And I'm like, I just kind of put it into perspective, like, holy crap, I'm lifting 20 pounds less than my body weight. And I don't even really like realize it until I have moments where like they spent some time with their dad for Christmas. And I'm like, whoa, my back is really full of knots. Like, I wonder why.
Right.
It's like, well, I can think of a few reasons. But
So tell us about the boys. So you just mentioned the oldest, Connor. Tell us how old they are.
so we just had birthday season in our house and it starts with Kian. It's October 11th and November 11th and then December 3rd. So it's literally like a birthday and a holiday every 2 weeks. And we're
Yes.
finally we can breathe in the new year now. But Finn just turned 11. He's my youngest. Kian's 13 and Connor is 15, and he's a freshman in high school this year. And that's just wild. He's
Yeah, that really is.
like talking about driving and
So much.
college and like,
Yeah, and to think about you saying picking him up, I'm like, "Oh my gosh." But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, ever since I've known you, you've always just, like, done whatever. You don't even question. You're just like, "Well, here's what I had to do today." So, I'm not sure that everyone
yeah,
can relate, but it probably is good to bounce some ideas off friends so that they can say,
yeah.
"Wait a minute, time out,
Well,
watch your
it's like
back."
I want to believe that I can always be able to physically, and that's, I guess, part of me and my drive to take care of myself and try to hit the gym. And I mean, I'm doing a lot of strength training on a daily basis, but I want to always be able to. But it's like, okay, it's a short distance. I'm not talking like I don't put him on my back and walk up the stairs anymore
Right.
like I did
Right, right,
2
right.
years ago, which was kind of wild. But he was under 100 pounds, and like,
Mhm.
okay, I can do that for sure. But I wanna be strong enough to always be able to lift, but there's that reality that it might just not be safe enough to do it,
Mhm.
but
Right.
guess try just to cross that bridge when we have to.
Yes, exactly. And you live in
But,
Wisconsin, you kinda mentioned that. Have you always been in Wisconsin?
not always. I'm born and raised in Madison, which is I'm working now 1 day a week for a dentist literally down the street from where I grew up. So that's kinda, yeah, it's just been kind of neat to come full circle in all the places I've lived. Like I said, I grew up in Madison. I thought I wanted to be a nurse before I went into the National Guard, and I went to college in a town called Eau Claire. It's like 2 hours north of Madison. I did like 2 semesters, and before I started the nursing program, I had met the boy's dad in the military and through my training, and then that took me to Kansas. I went and I joined the National Guard full time, basically. I'm dropped out of nursing school. Well, never started, but was the dean was like, "You are going to start next semester, so please consider that." But I just didn't love. It's funny that I'm like, "Oh, I don't love the culture of coming from Madison to a smaller town up north." I think now the population's changed a lot, but it was a culture shock to come from Madison, which has just all walks of life. But then I went from there to like small town Kansas, which is like population 500, you know. But it was a college town. K-State is there, so there's some diversity. But let's see. So I started out Wisconsin, moved to Kansas after living there about 5 or 6 years, and throughout that there was a lot of deployments. Like this is all kind of after September 11th and going into the military. Like I went through training with my unit in Afghanistan. So I'm like,
Wow. Yeah,
okay, I'm gonna come
so
out and go there.
yeah,
That was,
me saying, "Have you always been
yeah,
in Wisconsin?" That was kind of a dumb question because
yeah,
if you're involved in the military that you're not in one place.
yeah.
So Afghanistan, wow, how long were you there?
I never went. That was just
Oh,
like,
okay.
okay, my unit was there, and then my training, like that's probably a whole nother hour podcast. What was supposed to be a 13-week training program is like, okay, it got real. It's like, all right, this is really happening. I'm really gonna go to war here. I got to take this seriously. And then what was supposed to be 13 weeks altogether, though, ended up being like 23 or 24 months. Like I was gone for like 2 years. So it just is a lot of things that happened. By the time I was done with training, there was only like a couple months left on the deployment. So there were like, you're not going to go. But there's always that fear. So then living in Kansas, I think I got activated and called up to go again to Iraq and Afghanistan a couple different times, but then something always changed. Like and their dad was overseas for in one of those points where there was this point in our marriage, like I don't think we saw each other for more than 2 weeks, and it was like we're never going to be able to be overseas at the same time, and that fear of like, all right, I'm going, and then something would always happen where they're like, oh, well, do you need 2 weeks? So luckily, I never went overseas, but I did do some time in support of Iraqi freedom, and we serviced. I can't even remember how many vehicles, but I basically my HVAC skills translated into you're a vehicle mechanic,
Wow.
and I fixed a lot of windows and a lot of batteries on Humvees.
You are spot on that a lot of these things you definitely can tell helped formulate how your mind works and who you are today and why you're like, "Nope, I'm gonna figure it out." You can tell
Yeah.
that that's always been something. But were you like that as a kid too? Like, "Let me figure it all out," or was that more as you got into adulthood?
I think I've always been kind of like, I love puzzles. I love challenges and um, like I love an escape room. If that could be like an Olympic sport, it should be. Maybe we should make it one. But
Well, I just want to back up a little bit because, yeah, so Kelly alluded to this. She and I, we don't live near each other. We've only seen each other in person, I think, one time. But we occasionally, when time allows, we'll leave each other voice memos or messages on Facebook. And we're always like talking, talking, talking. So she's like, "Are you sure you want me on the podcast? Because you know how the two of us are. We'll never stop." But I'm so fascinated by all of the different things that you've done. And I said that you wore a couple of hats, but geez, you've worn way more than I even knew. But I want to talk more about some of the things that you brought up. But before I do that, I do want to remind our listeners, you hear this all the time. The reason I started this podcast was because my son Nathan has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and Kelly talked about the fact that she has 3 boys with that same diagnosis. I had never heard of it before. I heard about muscular dystrophy, but still didn't know all the details of it. And then found out about Duchenne when he was 5. He's 16 now. If you've been listening, he was my guest last week. So it was really fun to kind of hear his perspective. I'm glad I can talk to him a little more freely now that he's 16 about some of the things that he's been through. But yeah, when we got that diagnosis, it was like, okay, what we had planned is out the door. Everything's changed. So we really had to adjust. And Kelly has said this a few times too, figure things out in a different way. We always call it Nathan's way. And I know the challenges I faced with one child. So having 3 is,
yeah,
it's hard for me to even fathom. I don't think everybody's personality could handle it the way that Kelly handles it. I know there's times that I don't see the difficulty, but from what I see, it's very graceful and it's very figure outable. What she's teaching her boys, I think, is so very special because they're going to be more well-rounded by watching what their mom does and just seeing that, yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, there's a challenge, but we're going to figure it out. And I don't really hear her complain when she does. She'll say, "Oh my gosh, sorry, I vented." And I'm like, "Girl, let it out."
talking about the challenge now is like they are all different. They all need something different. Like genetically with their defect, I guess, of what causes Duchenne, a piece of the chromosome they're missing is a 44th exon on the 79 that if any one of those is disrupted or missing, like in our case, so one of my X chromosomes is missing that number. It's kind of crazy to think though, like genetically, they're all missing that same piece of the puzzle. But if any of those 79 are disrupted, it affects your body's ability to make that dystrophin protein, which helps protect your muscle and make it function. So I think that's where people get kind of confused. Even if they're making some, they're maybe not making enough. But I guess for me, the struggle is like having to come to terms with they're not all progressing the same way. They're not
Mm-hmm.
all manifesting the same way. Even though they're the same with the disability, in terms of how they have Duchenne is the same, but how they respond to the treatments, how they are progressing in the disease, just the lack of losing their ability to walk, and they're different. I think they're all just incredibly smart and so gifted. They're just amazing, like their ability to find. I'd say there's definitely hard days, and I think we've shifted somewhere. Like if you asked me 5, 6 years ago, I feel like we've been in it so long I don't even remember. It was 2016, so Finn was 6 months old when we got the diagnosis for all 3, so he's 11 now. So we've been in this space for almost 10 years, and um, I definitely feel like I've just been suspended in this alternate reality, and I do feel like there's been a lot of grief where I think something shifted for me towards the end of this year, and I thought, like, I've been so consumed by everything, by all the things, all the appointments. I just kind of like that's how I handle grief and trauma. I don't stop to think about it. I don't sit with it. I just keep moving, like keep moving, find more work to do. Work really like keeps my mind off of the things. It's control. You can't control any of it, and it's just so heartbreaking when you think of like a friend I was talking about how it's different for all of them where they're at, and she's like that seems so hopeless. And I think I don't think I've ever given up hope. I wanted to believe that like we'd break the odds, that they'd be walking until they're 21 or something, or maybe they'll never stop walking. I think if you don't have hope, though, if you lose hope, then it is really too heavy. But I've never like given up hope, but I think there's coming to an acceptance that like we know what's going to happen. We just don't know when. And then seeing it be different for everyone. I think that's been the struggle with my youngest. My middle's still walking. His body's changing. We can definitely see the effects of it, but they're all just built differently.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was really hard for Finn to see. And then, my momisms that I've had and things I've kept saying to them to keep them going. And you never have it all figured out. I think the right words come in the moment and then it passes. And they're kind of funny. They'll just say these really profound things and then they'll just be over it the next second. It's like, wait, did you even like, are you at peace? Are you okay? Are we just moving on? But I guess if you would have asked me like 9, 10 years ago if I'd ever truly find joy again, um, I probably would have laughed in your face. Like I feel like though starting off this year, like I don't have all the answers and I've realized I'm not gonna know the right things to say. There's gonna be more challenges ahead. But like to just start the year off with like sheer unadulterated joy and laughter and like Connor slammed a bottle of sparkling cider and he's like I had one beer this year and he's like give me the rest of that bottle, I want to polish it off, and it's like it's a sparkling cider from Costco, and it was just hilarious.
I think there's a couple things that I wanted to go back to, if you don't mind, before I forget.
Sure.
Yeah, like, so getting back to Duchenne, right? I mean, everything Kelly described, you say it a lot better than I do. I need to come up with my little speech like you had, because it's very clear the way that you described it. And Nathan has a different set of deletions, so he has similar issues, but a different situation. So Duchenne, it's part of rare disease, but it's also pretty common within the rare disease, because once you say it, you find out a lot of people have dealt with it or
Yeah.
they know somebody, and it mainly affects boys. And everything that Kelly said about the chromosome, like it's the same for me. It would be on the mother if it's carried, if it's genetic, but it's not always. Sometimes it spontaneously happens, but both Kelly and I are carriers and probably didn't know it. I mean, I didn't know it. There's a lot of progression now, where I just read a couple of weeks ago that they're now going to start testing when babies are born, which Kelly and I didn't have that, although she had 3 boys. So you find out about the one. I see
Yeah.
why I find out about all. I remember thinking, every time I have a boy, it's a 50% chance. So you can see why Kelly had all 3 of them have it. I mean, that's a really high chance. Plus, when you have kids close in age, and you don't generally find out till they're a little bit older. So it's very interesting how all of that happens. So people say, oh my gosh, 3 kids. And it's like, I can see how that can happen. But there's a couple other things that you brought up. So again, I started this podcast because, just like Kelly's, my path completely changed from what I expected. But Kelly's path, I mean, all of our paths have done that throughout our careers, throughout school, throughout where we lived. But something like this really changed the way I thought life was going to go. And you said something about hope. And my mind, I don't obviously see you all the time, but I see hope. And then you also talked about joy, and I see joy. So when you talk about hope, it's almost like, you're right. When Nathan was young, my husband and I were like, oh, we're going to defy the odds. I think we
Yeah.
all as parents think that, and we had hope. And he had the type of Duchenne that was more common. There were 8% of the kids that have Duchenne are like Nathan. So he was able to get into a medical trial that I thought, okay, he's going to get in this trial and he's going to totally walk till he's 15 or 20 or older, and he's going to just be doing so well because he's going to be on this medication. Well, lo and behold, he followed historical patterns. I mean, originally when he was diagnosed, they said, oh, he'll be in a wheelchair at age 12. Well, like around that time is when he pretty much
Yeah.
got into a wheelchair. So he has followed a lot of that progression, but I don't think that my hope is this. So back then it was hope that he's going to defy the odds and beat this uncurable disease. But now my hope is different. And I think, Kelly, you can probably relate that hope is more, I hope he has a good quality of life. I hope he does a lot of the things that he wants to do with or without a wheelchair. I hope Duchenne doesn't define him. I hope one of our guests, another Duchenne mom, said that she likes to say Duchenne is the least interesting thing about my son. There's so many other things that are more interesting about him. They have these personalities. I love when you talk
Oh my
about Connor, or
God.
when I see his videos, and the other boys, like they all have their own personalities. It's interesting that they are progressing differently, but
Yeah.
that's very true too, because boys that are exactly the same age as Nathan that have the same deletion that were in his trial everything's different. So each child is different. So it's really crazy to think about it with your 3. And then when you talk about joy, I see you as a joyful person because you're like, yeah, this day's really hard, but we're having fun. Or like, I just think you find it. So I hope that you continue to bring that. And I think the other really inspirational thing about you is, yeah, you can look ahead and feel hopeless and feel upset and feel a lot of grief if you think, what's life going to be like in 5, 10, 15 years? Or you can do what you do best and say, what are we doing tomorrow?
Yeah.
So
I think I try not to think like it's a new year, we're talking about goals, and I'm like, I don't want to not dream. I don't want to, because I've reached this point where I don't know, it's like, did I have mono? Am I just exhausted? Is it perimenopause? Like, it's so many different things, but I've like realized, like reflecting back on this, like I finally had time to pause during break, and sometimes it's a little like I've reached this point where we need our structure back. I don't like a really rigid, strict structure, but having some bookends on your day, like we're going to go to school at this time and then I get this amount of time, but it's just been super chaotic, and I'm realizing, wow, like energetically I am only one person. And that's something I say a lot when things are like, whoo, really crazy. I'm like, you guys, I am one person. Just hold on, be patient. And Finn has no patience. It's like he's on and off, and he's mostly like from the minute he's awake, he's on, and he gets destructive when he's not. I think we're learning to be bored. Like I was just talking about that though, like even letting my kids be bored could be the difference of like, oh, figuring out a cool activity to like literally killing each other. So it's like sometimes being bored can cost like, okay, now I need a new TV because he threw a remote because he's mad. And, I think he's also kind of he's lost his ability to walk at 10. So he's got all this energy and he doesn't know what to do with it. And I think he's had to manage his own set of emotions that come with that.
we're talking about finding joy and just not living like 5, 10, 15 years ahead because you can really get lost in that. So,
Trying to figure out, I'm like, I have limits and I have to think logically with things, like being nervous to go to the pool with all 3 of them by myself. I mean, I think that would make anybody nervous. I've always been that mom that's like, we're going to do it. And okay, I can go to the pool. I'm a good swimmer. But when you just realize you're outnumbered and everybody needs something different and often at the same time. So I would get so overwhelmed and just exhausted by trying to do things. And I feel like 10 years later, I'm back to that. I'm back to like 100-pound toddlers.
life has a funny way of reminding us that we can't plan for everything, but we can prepare for what matters most. That's why I'm so thankful for today's sponsor, Tammy Brown Insurance Agency. Tammy and her team don't just sell policies, they build relationships. Whether you're protecting your home, your car, or your family's future, Tammy takes the time to really listen and find coverage that fits your life. As a mom, a homeowner, and a Michigander, I love knowing that I've got someone local in my corner who actually cares, not just about my insurance, but about my peace of mind. So if you've been putting off checking your coverage, take this as your sign. Call Tammy Brown Insurance Agency or visit the Tammy Brown Agency Facebook page and tell them the Show Me the Way podcast sent you. Because when life takes a turn, it helps to have someone who can show you the way back to security.
Everybody's different. When things go south, everybody's needing something different, but it is really hard now. My thoughts are panicking a little bit more like, okay, I didn't know if college was going to be a thing for us, and now thinking, like you said, having that focus. I think in a way we have beat the odds from like the timeline they told us. Then castrate yourself was what I was told by the doctor. Like, don't have more kids, forget about it, and just live your best life, whatever that looks like. It's going to be short lived. So I think to be like in my brain, I'm like, we've already passed those odds, but now I do just want them to have the best quality of life they can. But I think there's this balance, I guess, leads me to this thought process I've had lately is like, what does that balance look like? Where can I pull back? Like, where can I let them be more independent? And where do I need to stay where do I need to delegate my energy to? Because I can't control what happens in the future. Can't control if they're going to get sick or how they're going to respond to a treatment. But I think being able to have that, okay, insight, or just being observant and seeing, okay, maybe this steroid isn't good for this kid. Maybe we do need to go back to that steroid. Maybe we need to come off steroids altogether. Like I feel like my guilt has been the last 3-4 years has just been hung up on trying to find a good balance behaviorally, knowing like this can help long term, but the short term has been just brutal. So I think humor and laughter, and I share a lot of the joy and the happy because that's what I want to focus on.
Right.
But
Okay, I'm gonna try
yeah,
to bring us back a little bit, and I want you to talk about what's on your heart. I told you it's not scripted, so I don't want to force you to talk about
yeah,
something maybe you don't want to talk about. But I am kind of interested. So you alluded to the fact that Connor was maybe showing a little bit less energy, and you weren't really sure what that was about. So you did tell yourself, okay, something has to be looked at. So you bring him in, and then you have the other children. And was it just like, well, okay, it's genetic, I
oh
better have them
yeah.
tested too? Is that how you found
That's
out?
basically like it was a really long journey where everybody told me, like our pediatrician, I think it was one of the nurses, and my mother-in-law was like, something is wrong with his leg. And when I think back, when we got that diagnosis, it finally all clicked. It made sense. But for a while, from he didn't walk until he was almost like 21 months. He
Nathan
would
was the
he
same.
would pull himself up and he would just stand there and
Mhm.
scream. And we lived in Texas, so I thought, which I just realized I never finished
Yeah,
all the
wait,
places I
Texas.
lived.
But yeah, Nathan
Like,
did the same. It was 18
yeah.
months and he didn't
But
walk.
yeah, it was like, oh, we're at the pool. Maybe the ground it's hot cement. Maybe it's just too hot, or he's tired. I don't know. There's always like some other alternative thing that made sense for the situation. And even then, I remember bringing it up because a friend of mine, her son had some kind of like torticollis and something with his ankles. Like he was just like really double jointed. So he's wearing a brace, and she was sharing. I was in a mom group in Texas, and she's like, yeah, we're going to do these little leg braces. And she was sharing all these things with her son. And I said, Connor hasn't really crawled ever. I don't think Connor did do was he just like roll side to side. He was the happiest baby though, I have to say. But I just remember having that conversation over coffee, and like he never did those things, and he didn't walk. And I was like, I wonder if I should get that looked at. And she was like, well, oh, the pediatrician said a lot of times that's normal for the first. She's like, I wouldn't get too worried. He's so healthy, so happy. And then flash forward 5 years later, and he was on his toes at idiopathic toe walking. And so it started with my mother-in-law and the one nurse, like he had this chest like puffed up. We just called it his little man strut. But then looking back now, I don't know. But it's like, it just kind of thought, okay, well, it's nothing to worry about. And then so we went from that, said, I think this is just a phase, idiopathic toe walking habits. And we just moved to a new house. We had taller counters. But then where it changed is like he didn't want to go up the stairs. He didn't want to do a lot of things. And he would just, I put him in this little kickers program, and he'd just be screaming his head off. But it ended up becoming like this kind of like wild goose chase. And I turned it into my mission of like, I'm just going to get my nose. We're going to get our no. And I think we saw, like, first it was the osteopathic, like the bone doctor, and like neurology was the end of the list of like 6 or 7 different providers. And as time went on, things got a little bit weirder. And I'm like, and it all started kind of with mother-in-law, and then asking a question like, what do you do? So I'm pushing like 100 pounds of stroller with a newborn, an almost 2-year-old, and an almost 4-year-old. And then I'd throw Connor over my shoulder like fireman carry. And that's how my daily activities went. I'd go around the block, Connor would be on his little tricycle. I'd basically throw the tricycle in the bushes, throw him over my shoulder, and I'd just push him home because he couldn't. But I'm like, this has got to be a better way of doing things because this is wild. It was like a period of maybe 9-10 months when we got to neurology. It was like one endocrine was before neurology, and I think the endocrine doctor we saw kind of had a suspicion, and he said, we could do some blood tests. But I said, like, and what would that do? Like, what would we be looking for? And I think they knew, and I think in that point I knew something was wrong. And then when we finally got to the neurologist, I'll never forget this day. Like, I don't remember the exact dates, of when these things happen. But I'll never forget what they said when we walk in. And so this around the time I started getting more active in yoga, and they do this maneuver called the Gowers maneuver, where they go into what looks like down dog, and then they kind of push up on their legs. And so Connor was doing that almost on a daily basis, and I just thought he was mimicking me doing yoga. So then we go in the room, and the doctor, the neurologist we saw, I guess flashback, the endocrine doctor's like asking if I wanted to order some blood tests. Me just being scientific fact and asking like more questions that you didn't have the answer for. I think he suspected something, but he didn't want to get it wrong. And then we walk in the neurology clinic, and the doctor said Gowers maneuver like so many different times. And then he said, "Oh, this is just classic Duchenne. This is classic Duchenne." I kept hearing that. I think I had seen the word Duchenne. I took a lot of different human body and anatomy classes throughout my education. And I know I've seen the term, and I just remember seeing that progression that he had worked out, but I didn't fully really know what it was or how it affected people. So I know I had heard it, but to just hear him say it that many times and seeing the look in his eyes, it's like when I work with a dentist and they look at the x-ray and confirm that's a cavity, it's like that's how like
Like they know.
he knew. I mean,
Yeah.
he knew for sure, and I was like, "He's seen this before. He knows
Mhm.
exactly what
Right.
this is." And it was like in that moment, I'm like, "It's Duchenne. It has to be." And I remember going home and I had to like I'm breastfeeding a baby. It couldn't fall apart, I'm like, "Let's just get the kids in their nap." Their dad was traveling for work, and he's like, "Well, how'd it go?" And I just remember just collapsing, and I couldn't even breathe. And the first thing they said is like, "Oh, well, we got to do this blood test." And we didn't have to do a muscle biopsy. They just had to do a blood test for Connor. And like the results for the CK test came in pretty fast, and I opened it and it was like 36,000 or something. I don't know what that means, but I knew the range of what it should be. I'm like, "Oh my God, it's Duchenne. It's Duchenne. Like that's what it is." And I went and Googled and read everything and just I don't know. Then I think I remember just being like, "Okay, well, surely all three of them can't have it." And I remember just comparing how they were as babies. Finn was doing stuff at 7 months old that neither of the other two were. So we're like, yes, no, maybe, but I don't think so. And then to get that result back, basically because of the family history and Connor's positive diagnosis, they just immediately we did the CK test. It was high for all of them. And then from there, we did a genetic test. I think we drew blood for the genetic test for all of them. And then when that came back, I'm like, I'm not a geneticist. I'm not the best with math, but seeing that numerical value, do I need to test myself? Like, should I be worried? And I just remember, like, oh gosh, is my heart going to be at, and my mom's heart took a decline, and ultimately she was a carrier. So that really kind of confirmed, like, but before I found that out, seeing that number, that math, I'm like, there's no way this can be random. Like, there's no way. Like, the
For all
numbers are
3,
just
right.
it's like a
Yeah.
0.1 to the negative 16th percent on of like likeliness of me not being a carrier. It's like
Oh, right.
so
Because
minuscule.
for all 3 of them to have
Yeah.
the diagnosis. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that for me, I kind of then pivoted like, where did this come from? Like, did it start with me? Where could it came from? And my mom also was a carrier. We did find before she passed. And then my mom was adopted. People always ask that because I've had some really strange questions. Like a lot of times people, I think they make that assumption that you just didn't know what you didn't know. And I've also met people that did know and they knew it was going to be 50-50, and they knew that they're like had a sibling with Duchenne, or they knew they were a carrier, or they just knew that they might be a carrier and they chose to have kids. That someone said once, like, why would you choose to have kids knowing that? And I'm like, well, if I did, it's none of your business, one. But two, like, I
Exactly.
didn't know, and I didn't even know it was anything to worry about. I mean, my older sister had a boy and a girl, and they're, as far as I know, completely healthy still.
I pointed out that your kids are close in age too, so it's
Yeah.
a lot of times, I mean, looking back, everything you said is exactly what we went through that in
Yeah.
hindsight, you're like, well, it makes perfect sense. But while you're
Yeah.
going through it, it doesn't. So a
I
lot of
think there's
times
that
you don't
denial
find
too,
out.
and
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, you should
Mhm.
get another opinion." I'm like, "Other than a genetic test?" Like,
Right.
that is a second opinion. But
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, it's good for you to know that you're a carrier because you did bring this up that it could affect a carrier's heart. Many times, like I said, it affects boys, but there still can be women, girls that have issues. So it's good to know that for your own health. But yeah, I mean, it's easy to say, how could you not have known? And how could you have had more kids? But
yeah.
again, everybody thinks about things differently. So you can't really judge that way unless you're in the shoes.
Yeah.
So you find out you've got the 3, and I'm sure it had to be just a very difficult time trying to understand what the new I hate this, the new
The
normal
new normal.
looks like, but what was it like? So you were married at this time, and
Yeah.
then how long after did you get divorced, if you don't mind
Uh,
sharing?
I wanna say so we got the diagnosis for I remember Connor's was sometime around March, just before, like, spring break, and I think it was July, like, around 4th of July. It was either, like, the 5th of July or it was, like, that 4th of July weekend. It was a Friday. I remember we were both sitting in the parking lot at the daycare in Beaver Dam, and, it was one of those rare times where we were gonna go and pick the boys up together. That didn't happen a lot. I just remember being together in the parking lot and then, getting a phone call and it was the doctor. I'm like, "It's Duchenne." The doctor doesn't call you if it's not. So that was July, and then things kinda just unraveled from there, and I think I filed for divorce, like, November of that same year, so just
Okay.
before Christmas, and then I thought that we'd be able to work things out, and I just remember through that time period, though, like, going through that early diagnosis, not 1 with 3, and then just, like, praying, like, "Where is my partner, like, in this? Why isn't he helping?" And thinking, like, maybe that's his way of dealing with grief, and I think a lot of it all the things that kinda led to, like, the end of our marriage, that may have been his way of dealing with it or not dealing with it. I think building this other life away from his family was maybe how he coped, and I think, like, it still hurts thinking about it. Like, there's times I'm like, "I didn't want any of this. I didn't want Duchenne. I didn't want to be" like, how did that be the thing that broke us, you know? And it's like, we went through some shit in the military, and I think we spent more time apart than we did together.
Mhm.
So, part of my, I guess, grief of my marriage ending was was it so wrong to want to be spending time together? And, like, I didn't know how to spend time together. We were never together.
I think you said it spot on, and again, I don't wanna make you talk about
Sorry.
such a difficult time. No, don't be sorry. I'm the one that's sorry for bringing it up, but I was just curious because I'm looking at it from a
Yeah.
different perspective.
It
I'm
was, like,
looking at
6
it
months
yeah, and I'm just looking
after.
at it from what I know of you, like, what a strong person and I know we don't love when people are like, "You're so strong, you're so amazing." I know we don't love that, but to just understand and again, that goes back to finding joy and bringing joy to your kids. You thought, "I need a partner, I need the right situation for my kids." So,
Yeah.
I respect you so much for I mean, I can't even imagine it was difficult enough to get the diagnosis, let alone also go
Yeah.
through a divorce in the same year.
I think there was, like, more to it was more like just changing career goals, and I think there was a lot of resentment where I always hoped to work full time at some point, but just realizing, we had a lot of arguments I think a lot of people do over finances, and he felt like, "What if I wanna be home and be the caregiver?" But it was like, "Your job makes more money than I do," and then the stress of working in dental, like, people are depending on you, and I can't just leave early, so then for me, I think if it wasn't Duchenne solely, it was all the little nuances, like, I don't wanna do all the comings and goings to daycare. I can't work a 12-hour day and, like, hey, like, I think I think that could have been part of it, though, that stress of, "Well, why don't I get to have a break and time off?" You know? Like, sure, his career has stress, and everybody that works a job probably experiences some stress, but it definitely magnifies. And when you've got bills that stack up, it's like, in retrospect, I think the divorce is probably the best thing that could have happened in terms of a financial, like genetic testing is not cheap, and so to have a lot of that just kind of disappear. And then because their disabilities, they qualify for a special type of Medicaid as well. So that helped. But yeah, it was, I
Yeah.
think, realizing too, like one of my best friends, she just came to my yoga class yesterday and we did a cookie exchange. And so, like, I guess where it's really emotional for me is this all kind of broke out when I'm like, I need to file for a divorce. There's no fixing this anymore. It's just done. It all kind of unraveled like the day before this cookie exchange when I finally realized what was actually happening and where we were at. And and my friend, she's just like, Kelly, you've come such a long way. This is like our 7th year of doing this cookie exchange now. And we did it the Monday before Christmas. And it was really nice to be like, we've all had a lot of loss and grief and loss due to divorce or loss of a loved one. The last 3 years, each of us has lost someone really close to us. My best friend and I, we both lost our moms about a year apart. And then our other friend lost her brother. And this year's the first time nobody's had any losses. And we're all kind of in a really good place, I think. Things have shifted a lot. We're not like where we want to be career wise, but we're just talking about who we are as parents and the life we're giving our families is just infinitely better than where we started as young adults,
Mm-hmm.
where with
Mm-hmm.
our parents, and we're all kind of in this state of awareness, like they just did the best they could with the tools or lack of tools. But to come away from that and we just laughed and we just watched dumb movies and it was nice to just all be a little bit carefree. And Jamie texts me like, "You've really grown so much." We were talking about home projects and where people, like you say, "Oh, I don't know how you do it." And they were asking how the boys were doing. And I just said, "I don't know how I functioned like 7 years ago. I worked 40 hours a week. I had doctor appointments. We had so many doctor appointments in a short amount of time, and then their dad was gone, and just it was one thing after another, and I just kinda kept going, and then about a year into Duchenne, I sold my house and bought this house. I think it was right around after our divorce was finalized. I mean, everything happened from, like, the end of our separation through divorce. Divorce took a year, and within a year, I had just changed everything, and so I was talking about craziness, but they were like, "Well, Kelly, you went through some extreme changes."
Yes.
And I had to think back and just I think I finally, like, forgive myself and give myself grace for how I might have handled things or didn't handle things well
Yeah.
over the last few years,
Yeah,
and
because when I hear you talk or when I think about you, when you share stories with me, again, I'm obviously not around you all the time, so of course
yeah.
it's not perfect days, but it always just seems like you're like, "Well, here's what happened, but I just got through it," and I'm like, "Wow." So there is a lot of superheroism there, but on the other hand,
Yeah.
it's okay to be normal and your tendencies to get emotional. It's okay that we all have that side, but you certainly have handled things with grace, and I mean, I've had a lot of friends and family that have gotten divorced or had to move to a different state or whatever, and they always say, like, "My therapist or my family told me don't do any extreme moves or anything," and it's like you had one thing right after another,
Yeah.
so I totally understand that, but and I thank you for going there and sharing that with us because
Yeah.
I just kinda wanted to ask more about that, but
Definitely worth it.
yeah,
So,
for sure, but I want there's a couple more things that I wanna make sure we touch
yeah.
on before I let you have your day back, but so I appreciate you going back, kind of sharing, what it was like back then. Again, I really see a very hopeful person, somebody that brings joy and shows such a great example to her boys, so keep doing that, but, um, I just wanna kind of I wanna touch on, obviously, after you've been through all of this, if you have advice or thoughts to give to people, not that they will ever go through exactly what you've been
Yeah.
going through, but what are some I mean, you've kind of shared throughout a few things, yoga, a couple of things like that. So I kinda wanna give you
Yeah.
an opportunity to do that, but also, at the very beginning, you talked about not being good at asking for help. And
Yeah.
you did mention a couple of names. You talked about your mother-in-law being involved at the beginning, and I've heard you talk about her quite a bit because even though you are divorced, you still have a relationship with her, and she still does come to visit and occasionally help you. And then you also mentioned James, who I know is somebody that you've been seeing that knows the boys really well and has offered some help over the years. But even if you're not good at asking for it, I
Yeah.
know you need it. So I would love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on that help at this point, and then, yeah, we'll kind of conclude with what are some pieces of advice that you'd give to somebody that's dealing with a challenge?
I think, um, just knowing it's okay to not know what you need and not have the answers, but I've learned that sometimes not asking or not letting people help is like a trauma response, and it's a control thing, and it's like the only thing I can control is what I do with my day and my time, and so somehow I think there's that fear too when your kids have immense behaviors, and it's like any little thing can throw everything off. So when you finally find a good routine, or you find some normalcy in the abnormal, and then you're so afraid of it to change. So it's like, ooh, even like somebody cooking mac and cheese differently, that might throw us into this spiral. And now it's like funny where like the kids hate me making mac and cheese. They love, they ask, they're like, we want mac and cheese, but no offense, we
But
want
not yours.
James to make it. We hate your mac and cheese. They'll
Well,
be like,
that's
where's James? So now it's kind of evolved to where, I've asked, like, there's times where too, sometimes you just need to get out. You need a sanity break. So being able to say, like, that's, I'm glad you want to help, but like, I think that's the balance too, is James is a coder. He's working on computers all day and he just wants to get out and get a break. So trying to find that balance where sometimes we both just need to get out. And it's like, hey, why don't I just let me go take a walk with a dog and you can go here, and just trying to be open to other people's ideas, I think, because sometimes too, like, I don't even realize I hit my limits. I have my breaking points, and I think I'm really sensitive when I see other people getting agitated. I'm like, I'm very aware of it. I used to take that really personally, where he'd walk in and be like, I think you need a break. Like, who are you to tell me what I need?
right. I
But
get
I
that.
think having to have some perspective, like, look, I've been home all day. It's been chipping away at my soul, all the little demands. So, and then now it's something's pivoted where I'm like, that's great. This is what we need them to ask someone else. Cause like then the other flip side is like he has had a hard time kind of stepping in that role. He's here quite a bit and he's not their dad. He's not trying to be their dad, but I think dating someone with 3 kids, and kids can get protective of their mom and they can say things and they can push people away because they have their own emotions about divorce too. And
Hmm.
it has to be really hard to kind of step in like, hey, I'm here to help. And they're like, I want mom to do this. Mom, 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 mom. And now I'm kind of like, ooh, it's weird to have them ask someone else. Like, I don't know how I feel about that,
Well,
but
that's
it's kind of
that's very
nice,
that's
you
very
know?
interesting to me too because
Yeah.
I mean, I'm married, but it's the same. Like,
Yeah.
so it's interesting to say like for you to have that experience because yours makes more sense. But Nathan will be like, "Nope, I don't want you to do that, Dad." And it's like
Yeah.
he's right here. What do you mean? So
You
so
get
they
like
do
that
have
though
their
too with like
preferences.
people helping them in the
Yeah,
shower, and then
yeah,
that's
yeah.
somewhere where Connor's like he wants to do it himself, but he's like, yeah, I think I missed my armpit, so now we gotta
Right.
gotta give him his time and then go back.
But
And
you touched on it perfectly. It's that it's control. So,
yeah,
yeah, you want a sense of what you can control, but when you have a child in a wheelchair, there's so little they can control. So if they can
yeah,
say, "Well, I only want this person to do this," that's their way of
yeah.
expressing it.
And
So
it's
that's
funny too,
fair.
like they always like Finn always wants help when I am like the most incapacitated to be able to help. I've got my hands in a pile of meatballs, or something, and
Now
he's
I
like, "Can
need
you help?"
you.
I'm like, "Dude, I gotta wash my hands first."
I mean, obviously, I wouldn't try to relate on everything that you've been through, but there's a lot of things that I think that's why we enjoy speaking with each other so much
Yeah.
because it's fun to have somebody. It's nice to have somebody that you can relate to like that. So, okay, so it sounds to me like maybe you're getting a little bit better at asking for help.
I think a little bit. I think I'm a little bit better at, tasking or saying like, "Hey, these are the things I could use help with," and then not being too like tied to a way of someone doing it too. Like
Right.
maybe they didn't go to the grocery store, I asked them to, and that's okay. Or maybe I said like, "Hey, could you go to the dollar store and get a bag of ice?" But maybe they went somewhere else. It's like,
And they paid $3.99.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think then too, like, yeah, just being able to give an option for people.
I think that's great, and I hope that you continue to do that, because something else I try to say in this podcast, again, it's show me the way, so it's people dealing with times in their life where they've dealt with challenges or pivots and things look different than what they expected, but I often say that people want to help. I mean, sometimes people say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm here if you need me," and they really don't mean it, but most of the time when someone offers something, by you letting them, you're
Yeah.
helping them too. So, I think
I love that.
I think it's a big change and something that we, especially women in general, we just
Yeah.
have to get better with. But I think too, as your kids get older, you're going to find you need it more and more. So don't be afraid. And
I
I
think I've
don't
been
think you're.
better at, saying no too, because
That's
sometimes
good.
people's way of helping, I think saying like, "Thank you for thinking of us, but that's not helpful to us." Like, I don't need another wheelchair in my house, but thank you
Yeah,
for thinking
that's
of us.
true.
But, being more specific, I think you don't always know, but I think, yeah, letting people help in their way, and it might not really be what you need, but
Yeah.
sometimes accepting the help can create another burden in another way. So I think just trying to find that balance, but I think just letting go of some of the control and letting people, like letting them help, like give people more specifics or just say, I just need someone to listen, or I don't know what I need, but when I think of something, I'll let you know.
Yeah. I
And
appreciate
just
that.
like leaving that avenue open, I think
Yeah.
that leaves people not feeling so like, I think it's like
Helpless.
holidays. I'm always like, there was a time where I think maybe I was just really stuck in my grief, but I think people worried, how are they going to act? Or what about this? Or like, I just kind of didn't get invited to things as much. And I remember just being really upset a lot, like, well, let me make that call. Let me decide if it's going to be too much for us or if we're having a good day. And I think, though, when you say no enough to things, people just stop inviting you or like they
Yeah.
have their own lives. I think when you can leave that avenue open, people are more willing to keep the door open for you as well. So
I
I think
agree.
just realizing it goes both ways. And sometimes people don't ask for help because you're too guarded or they just don't think you need anything because you don't ever talk about the struggles you're having. So
Yeah, no, I think that is really good. And as I'm listening to you talk, and hopefully my listeners will get this too, this relates to everything, not just having 3
yeah.
boys with an incurable disease in a wheelchair. This relates to so many things, and a lot of us, we want to control the situation, or I like what you said about the door goes both ways, because you have to think about that. It can't just be give, give, give. It can't just be take, take, take. So I love that. And I also think that maybe I try to give the benefit of the doubt too much to people, but I do think a lot of times people do wanna be helpful, and they do wanna do things that are positive, and they do wanna spend time with you, but you're right, if you keep closing the door, then they don't shut down because they're mad at you, they shut down because they're like, "Well, guess they don't really need me, or they don't want me in their life."
Mhm.
So, I really like what you said about the door goes both ways, that's important. But yeah, I really do wanna be respectful of your time, so
Yeah, thank you
I'm
for
gonna of course, but I am gonna
paying
give you
attention
one
to that.
of course, but one more opportunity, if there is one piece of advice that you could give to somebody that's maybe dealing with a challenge, obviously it's probably not the same challenge you've dealt with, but if they're going through a
Yeah.
difficult time in life, what is something that you would want them to remember?
Oh, that's good. I think something I heard recently, it was like it was probably somewhere on Facebook or one of those reels, out
Yes,
there
yes,
where it's
the
like
meaningful words, yeah.
oh, I had coffee with my younger self, that whole vibe thing, but
Yes,
it's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like the struggles you have, like your worst day is what somebody like prays for and hopes for. And I think about that too. Like, oh man, I got to replace baseboards in the bathroom again because these wheelchairs tore it up. And it's like, well, I wanted a house. I wanted to be able to paint. I wanted to be able to do these things. And so I think just not giving up and realizing like your younger self or 5 years from now, you're going to be so amazed at what you've overcome and where you are. And if you just don't get too stuck in the heaviness of it, the drama, like your situation will change and just knowing that it will change and like your worst day is what somebody prays for. I think
Oh,
that's really
yeah, love that.
stuck with me lately.
Yeah, no, I think it's true. It's a really good perspective because, I mean, gosh, you have some days. So to take a second, breathe, you know, take upon your yogi studies there and think that way. I think that's really good perspective, and you just made me think about that too, because I'll think things too, and then I think, wait, I've got my 2 boys with me. I still have Nathan here. I
Yeah.
mean, he could have
I
had
think
something
that
else
too, like,
happen when
I've
he
had
was
this
younger.
fear of, like, I don't know what's gonna happen, and, like, so we just watched the Stranger Things finale,
Oh,
and
we
I
did too
bawled,
last
like,
night.
ugly tears, and it's, like,
I
the
did
end of
too.
this era, and it kind of
I
gave you
did
though, it's
too.
like that openness, like, you don't know what the future is, you can write your own story, but it's like,
Yes.
I don't wanna think about a future that doesn't include laughing at that scene where, you know, delightful Derek flips off Vecna, and we just, like, everybody
Delightful
lost
there.
it. Delightful
Yeah,
Derek.
for sure, for sure. No,
Um,
I think that is great perspective, and I really am glad you shared that with us. Well, again,
it just being more present. That's
yes, be in
the
the present. That's for
that's
sure.
the advice, I guess. That's what I'm trying to
Yes.
do more of.
Yeah, same. Well, that's really good advice, and I do really appreciate you going back and answering my difficult questions, because I think people would want to know, like, how did you navigate that? And I would agree with your friend who probably knows you better than I do, but it does seem like you've come a long way, and you continue to just find ways to figure things out, and every day is
Yeah,
going to
just
look different, and the boys are going to
one day
keep
at a
getting
time.
older. One day at a time is all you could do.
Yeah.
But just
That's how you
keep.
build resilience, I think, and one other thing I'd say, like, knowing it's okay to be frustrated, you don't have to like the process,
That's
but
very true.
just continuing to do it, like, resilience is built, it's not something that you feel, it's something you do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's good perspective, and it's something that our boys could learn too. But yeah, I just think that we've all been through changes, and we've all been through different paths, but, like, when you hear somebody talk about challenge after challenge after challenge, it really makes
yeah.
you stop and think for a minute. There's people that can learn from you, again, if they are in the Duchenne world or not, they can learn from what you've been through. So keep it
Yeah.
up. I know it's hard. It's hard to continue
We'll
on
have
that,
some
but
long haul large Marge adventures coming up
yes,
soon, so I'm sure we'll
I
have a lot
love
more
that.
stories of
Yeah, yeah, we could have you on again. But but I thank you for sharing everything that you did, and for just always going along with me. I'm like, "Hey, you have to be on my podcast." So I
Yes, it's
appreciate you
good. I
giving time. A great lesson for people, and it's exactly what I'm trying to do with this podcast. So thank you so much for sharing your story, and here's to a great 2026 for you and the boys, and I'll keep following you and watching all their shenanigans. But yeah, one day
yeah.
at a time, be in the present, and keep working on the help, but we're all going to do that.
Thank you for all your support too, and
Of
Nathan's
course.
Ninjas, and
Of course. I'm glad we've created a relationship. So,
me too.
thank you for joining me for the Show Me the Way podcast. I truly appreciate you tuning in to today's episode about overcoming adversity and finding your path. I hope it brought you new insights, empowered you with perspective, and inspired you to find joy in your journey. If this episode touched your heart, don't forget to leave a quick review, as it will help us reach and motivate more people. Until next time, keep seeking the light and showing the way.